So we've just released a new firmware upgrade for our code controller, and I'm going to do a quick demo of how to upgrade your firmware using a Mac. It's a similar process to the Windows and the Linux. And of course there's instructions and readmes, but I wanted to give you a quick demonstration on how to upgrade your firmware. The new code firmware has a lot of really cool new features. There's a fill mode, so you can change the way the encoders behave with the LED rings. You can either fill them up or it can just follow to show you where your value is. There's also a shift function, so you can have two different speeds, and you can adjust the speed. There's many different speed levels you can adjust, so how quickly you go from 0 to 127 depends on how you set that. There's also local control and a couple cool little functions that allow you to get more functionality out of your code with just this firmware upgrade. Our controllers have a bootloader on them, meaning you just need your USB to upgrade the firmware. So to do this, go to our support section of our site, downloads, and you want to download the code firmware 101, which is the latest firmware version, and follow the instructions to upgrade. So on a Mac, I've downloaded this folder. It says Code Rev 1 Mac. To get it in bootloader mode, which allows you to upgrade the firmware, it's separate than just having it in your regular plug-in mode. You're going to need to make sure it's unplugged, hold down the Livid logo button, which is also the Gary button. Gary's our mascot, and plug it in, and you'll see the two blinking lights here. That means you're in bootloader mode. Now it's really important to make sure that you have a good power source and you don't unplug your controller during this process, because if you do, your controller won't work anymore because it won't finish the firmware upgrade and it'll just have incomplete firmware. So then you'll have to send it back to us. We'll have to open it up. It's going to be a huge pain in the ass. So just make sure you don't unplug it and make sure you have a good power source. So if you're running on battery, plug your computer in. Alright, so now that we're in bootload mode, I'm going to go ahead and open up this folder, this Code Rev 1 Mac folder, and I'm going to look for the command files. There's two command files here. This is the standard file, and this is the alternative file named alt. The reason there's two files is, one, in earlier versions we used a different encoder, so they actually turned in a different direction. So you'll know you have that wrong one if you run the firmware upgrade and you turn your knob and you notice the LED ring going the opposite direction. If that happens, you just need to run this alt program here. So to upgrade your firmware, all you really need to do is double click on this, and it may or may not ask you for your password depending on how you have your computer set up. This time it didn't. Once it says process complete, see, it runs through all these different processes. Once it says process complete, you've upgraded your firmware. So you can go ahead and unplug it and plug it back in, and I'll give you a quick editor rundown of how this all works. The encoder mode has two modes. One's walk, one's fill. Walk just follows you. Fill fills up the whole LED ring, and you can access all this from going in the encode menu. Local control just works so when you turn your encoder, the LED turns. You can also turn that off in case you just wanted the software to send some different kind of notes to light up the LED ring. So we have walk, which is our standard mode, and code users will know that when you turn it, it just shows you where your value is. And there's also fill mode, which allows you to set it so it fills when you're turning your knob. And let me just reset it here. Fill mode. So here I go. Now I'm filling up the LED ring. So every time I adjust the value, it shows you where I am. The other cool thing about that is you can adjust the speed. So I have these different speeds, and I can also do a shift to go to a different speed. So I can set up dual speeds here for my encoders. And of course you can slow it down. So I have my slow speed, and I'm going to go to my fast speed. So if I just hold this down, I have a different speed. So that's pretty much all the functions we have of the new encode functions of the code editor. Again, this works on Mac, Linux, and Windows, and you can download it for free from our site and get a little bit more out of your code.